Well, hey there, it's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol. That's wavetables.lol, home of KRC Mathwaves, the world's largest collection of wavetables, single-cycle waveforms, and even some samples for all sorts of modern synthesizers, including our new friend, Dawesome Kontrast. Kontrast by Dawesome is billed as not another wavetable synth, but it does in fact use wavetables, but it takes a unique approach to wavetables. You've probably never seen the scanline, the playhead for a wavetable do stuff like this, or maybe even stuff like this. Or like this. Or like that. A circular reed head with deformations. Well, fat fingers, as usual. So, what do we make of this? A wavetable synth with a very different approach. What do I want to say about this synthesizer? I like it quite a bit, actually. And we'll play through some of the sounds. And I want to talk about how to use this thing and maybe how to use it with external libraries of wavetables like KRC Mathwaves, which is 160,000 wavetables made with various mathematical techniques. Also I have my KRC Orchestral Impressions collection of wavetables that are wavetables made from acoustic orchestral instrument sources. And they work really well with Kontrast. On the face of it, Kontrast is a fairly simple, one layer, 2 oscillator synth. One of the oscillators is the one that we're looking at here, with all of the black and white stuff, and then there's a second kind of supplemental oscillator. That's kind of your standard analog modeling type of oscillator that has unison. But the star of the show here really is the primary oscillator, which is a wavetable oscillator, but it presents a wavetable in a different way than our standard wavetable synths. Like if we compare this to, say, Korg Modwave, which is one of my favorite wavetable synthesizers, the view of the wavetables that you get is typically either this kind of 3D view with a 2D view superimposed on top of it. Sometimes it's just a 2D view. Dawesome Kontrast does away with that and instead replaces that view with what kind of looks like a terrain. You kind of think of it as it's like an aerial view of our wavetable, and the dark spots represent the low points of the waveforms, and the light spots are the high points of the waveforms. And I really want to turn this voice gain up. I should have done that before I started recording, huh? This is a very typical for me type of wavetable. This is from the KRC Polygonal Redux collection that's inside of KRC Mathwaves. And these are waveforms that have a very particular character. Their harmonics are the... Interesting. The harmonics are controlled by a mathematical series called the polygonal numbers. These are the polygonal numbers for the 9-sided polygon that go from a sharp version of them to kind of a blurred version of them based on the harmonic fall off. But I'm using this in a lot of my examples today because, well, you might know what it sounds like from my previous videos, but also it's very easy to hear the changes that are happening based on how we change the scanning of the wavetable. I do think that there's sort of a missed opportunity here. I would actually like to have a view where I could see, like in a 2D, this kind of, cut across view of what the wave shape actually is. Because if you would have asked me, do you think this is a good idea to, allow the scan line to like move like this and like cut through the wavetable at an angle? I would have told you that, well, and we hear it, I would have told you that that's probably mostly going to throw off saw-like harmonics, depending upon the wavetable, but you're probably, as you change, let's see if we can stop that let's do this. You're probably going to get kind of like saw-type harmonics, buzzy stuff happening if you were to change the read angle. And in fact, that's what happens, but it's not actually a terrible thing. Oh boy, I'm popping. I always do that, don't I? I'm always like, oh, I'm popping. I mean, this is kind of interesting, I guess, because we're going from that very pure polygonal waveform timbre to something that would respond better to filtering. We can change all sorts of parameters here, by the way, even like make the waveform kind of clip. And that's still really quite pretty. And that would give us something more to filter. In the original patch here, I didn't have the filter on, but we could adjust the filtering, right? Okay, well, I was trying to talk about adding some filtering to this, but I got distracted by a notification. Notifications, how do they work? Anyway, it's very easy to animate, to modulate parameters. That's very pleasant. So we take that initial buzziness and we just, modulate it right out. So I've got an envelope here that has what kind of decay? About a 4-second decay. And then a little shorter one on the release. And the filters here range from kind of clean and digital to more analog modeling filters. With interesting resonance to them. There's the dirty filter, acid filter. Whoa. Filter face. Wow. Wow, 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 wow. Pretty neat stuff. Really interesting modulation system. So you've got a main, like this is the amplitude envelope for the entire voice. And then you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other modulators that you can work with. And any of them can be of any type. So like if you don't need, say, keyboard tracking for anything, when I don't have keyboard tracking connected to anything, if you right click on an element. I don't know if you can see that. It might be behind my big fat head. If you right-click, it'll show you what destinations are in your routing. So we can see that the first envelope here, let's get it back up on the screen. There we go. The first envelope is connected to all sorts of things. So it's connected to the main envelope, it's connected to filter cutoff, and it's connected to something over in scan. Yeah, it's connected to the exposition and scan. That's how our waveform is moving from, I guess this would be left to right. Let's reset this a little bit, shall we? And so you can hear that we can get very different effects from the same wavetable, and there's all sorts of wacky things you can do. Let's reduce the size. You can do a circular scanline, which works surprisingly well. I wouldn't have guessed that this would work so great. And you see there's macro knobs, so I've got the macros 1, 2, and 3. You can relabel these. And I've got them connected to my MIDI controller. I'm using Bitwig today, of course, as I usually do. And you can see the macro controls are here. And you can just right-click on these and set them up, to your keyboard controller, right? I don't think within Kontrast there is a CC mapping function, but I think it just assumes that you've got a DAW that can do that. So you can see that macro 2 is affecting this phase amount here, which gives us some pretty crazy effects. And, in traditional Dawesome style, a lot of the effects of things can be inharmonic, they can be dissonant, they can be distorted. But you can be subtle with it as well. It's very, very interesting. I don't know what to say about this synth sometimes, except that it's extremely interesting. There's even like a PWM style modifier. You can see it's sort of rezzing out portions of our circle. At least I hope you can see that. And then you can even go into wilder shapes, like the rose. Which kind of creates little granular clouds, in this case, with phase amount up. But they're more flower-like at other settings. Like a spirograph now. Did I leave my filter on? Yeah, I did. We can easily turn whole sections off. Like if I don't want any filtering at all, I can turn off this whole filter section. Just turn it back on like that. It has great effects. So here we are without effects. And then the effects rack, there's a whole bunch of things. So you've got choruses, you've got reverbs, you've got delays, you've got distortions, of course. Peter from Dawson seems to be all about distortion. And then utility functions like gain, EQ, compressor limiter, and OTT limiter. It's very well specified, and the reverbs are quite beautiful. Like clouds is really cool. Okay, so you kind of get the idea here. This is a very weird approach to wavetables. I haven't seen too many people demonstrate this, but I wanted to talk about some of the real basics. Like if you want to make this synth work like a normal wavetable synth, like how would you set that up? Well, let's remove this modulation real quick. You'll see that by default, and we can return things to their defaults. So we could go to like reset to defaults. And now we've got all of our settings at their base settings. And there's no modulation here on any of these parameters. I just took it off. The X position is the same thing as like the frame position or the position or the, I don't know what you call it, you know, percentage. It's like which waveform we are picking out of our wavetable. And the wavetable we're listening to right here is my exponential saws wavetable from KRC Mathwaves Volume 4, which starts as a normal sawtooth wave and then becomes increasingly exponential as we scan up the wavetable. So it becomes very narrow and nasally. But you know, like looking at this kind of bird's eye view, you wouldn't necessarily understand what the wave shape is. It's a unique approach to this. So if we wanted to make a kind of normal wavetable synthesizer, we could set our X all the way down here at the bottom. And I do note that the maximum travel of the X-axis does seem to depend on how many frames are in the wavetable. In my own wavetables, they have an arbitrary number of waveforms in them, specific frames in them, but typically never more than 64, because that's what the Korg synths support. And then, you know, the synth just interpolates between those frames. But I do find that sometimes the maximum travel here at 0 is not really the start of the wavetable, it's up higher. You can see as I move this slowly, there we go. That's kind of the true end of it. And then if we wanted to, you know, modulate our position, right, from here back to here, we can just drag that guy. There we go. And then we'll select a modulator. We'll use this second envelope here. And again, the end position isn't necessarily right here at the highest value. I wish that it would interpolate this a little bit differently so that the entire span of the wavetable is always 0 to 100%, but it doesn't seem to be that way. Now, it could be actually that, and I haven't tested this, but it could be that Kontrast is expecting some metadata. I did note that Sound Author, in the wavetables that he provided with his presets, they were exported out of Serum, and so they have some of that Serum metadata about how many frames there are. I don't know if Kontrast changes its behavior based on that, but I will probably talky-talky, like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. I will likely be doing a pack of a curated set of wavetables, like maybe around 256, with accompanying presets for you sometime soon in the future. But I haven't had that much time to work with Kontrast yet. It takes a while to develop new stuff, right? But I'm having a great time playing with it. And you might remember the previous Dawesome synth we looked at, Myth, I did not like the first version of. It was, well, in the thumbnail, I called it hot garbage. Because I mean, architecturally, there was nothing wrong with this. Highly modular is pretty cool. The effects are great, but it's like the sound of the oscillators was terrible. Now, Dawesome Kontrast is very different. I think that the sound of its wavetable/terrain oscillator is really good, and I'm having fun exploring it. And so even though the presets have like lots of crazy things going on, you can do more traditional synth sounds with it, like, you know, this one. And I'm just kind of freestyling today, as I sometimes do. Whoa, listen to that. And look at those cool scan lines. So this wavetable, which is weird, right? It looks like these two triangles. Well, this is a PWM waveform. So every position in this, let's reset this. Every position in this wavetable is a square wave of some sort with like a different duty cycle. But that's how that looks in Kontrast. I just turned down oscillator 2, which is also doing a square wave PWM type thing. We'll go back to the other scan lines, and you just get like a more complicated type of motion to it. And they're fun to look at. What does this look like when, I don't think I have any macros on this. No. What does this look like if we go full circle? What does it sound like? Not that different. Pretty cool stuff. Let's see. I wanted to talk about a few other interesting things about this synthesizer, and then we'll play through some of the factory content because there are some pretty cool patches in there. In my previous videos about Dawesome Myth, and I did one that's just about physical modeling, I talked about one of the things that was great about Dawesome Myth is that it did have physical modeling capabilities, and we do see some of those come back in Kontrast. Just to start, I want to talk about like the basic concept. So there's this modal filter that's in Kontrast. It's also found in Myth. And what it is it's a bank of resonant filters. Oh, it's not giving us what we want. But the typical approach in physical modeling is you hit a modal filter bank, or a modal filter as they call it here, with some kind of sharp impulse that's typically some sort of noise, and the character of the noise will change the response of that modal filter. And so if we start with like a noise source, and there is a noise source in oscillator 2, like we could just pick the noise waveform here, but we can also make them from the wavetable oscillator. And in this particular wavetable, the wavetable I have loaded is one of my format noise wavetables. There's many of these. There's a huge collection of format wavetables in KRC Mathwaves that basically are different carrier sources. So there's like sawtooth waves, there's square waves, and then a couple different varieties of noise that then have superimposed on them a whole bunch of different vocal formats. So they sound a little like voices. If we were to reset our scanning here, oops, that's still not giving us what we want. It's because there's modulation. I'm just going to take some of this off. Let's see. Let's take that off of there and that off of there. Somewhere I probably have this patch that's just like this, but this is what I grabbed. We still don't have a straight scan line. Oh, there's a little bit of the bio thing here. What's modulating bio? It's so cool that you can just like right click and you see, oh, it's macro 1. We can just take it off. Okay, so now you can't really see it probably because we do get a little bit of like, if the scan line is moving fast, we get a little bit of distortion on it. It's kind of the same thing as like rolling shutter. Scan line's moving too fast for the computer to repaint. But that's a straight line, and so you can now kind of hear what this wavetable sounds like, particularly if we were to slow the decay down. Oops, and it would really help if there was sustain here. Boy, I'm doing a great job demoing this, Keith. So you can hear how this wavetable goes through like different vowels, but the carrier underneath it is noise. And so if we have a wavetable like this, we can, greatly F with that. And we can get all sorts of different kinds of noise. Maybe we'll try. Now it's becoming more like a white noise. You almost don't even hear that format effect. And then we can hit the modal filter, the resonant filter bank with that. Oh, look at that. Very strange, right? It's a cool form of synthesis. It's one of the core principles of physical modeling. What happens if we rosify this? Sounds like a plane now, doesn't it? And one of the cool things about the modal filter is that it's trainable. It comes with a bunch of different resonant things. Let's see. How's the sitar sound here? Oh. And now that's very distorty, but you get the idea. But one of the cool things is you can actually train it with your own either wavetables or any audio source. Let's go back to our original version and then turn the modal filter up. We need to hit this harder. And so this is trained on one of my polygonal waveforms, but we could just go and grab, let's see, what do we want here? Ooh, dare we try one of the Orchestral Impressions wavetables? These are some strings. Here's pizzicato strings. Let's see what this does. Maybe we want this a little higher. Oh, cool. So we're kind of sort of morphing from something that sounds sort of flute-like, right? Because some of that residual noise comes through. And then it's a little more bell-like up there. I took this idea in a bunch of different directions. I think you get the idea of what you can do with the modal filter. Oh, it's very cool. Oh, here we go. Here's one that's different, and then I've got my macro knobs set up to monkey around with the scan. And I can get kind of all sorts of different effects. The other thing that we could do is we don't have to go, let's see, what's this one? Oh, this is just noise. So you can do all sorts of really interesting percussive stuff with a noise type wavetable. And you see that I'm very aggressively changing the scanning and just ending up on this little dot. All sorts of cool percussion things you could potentially do there. Or you could do this. You don't have to just hit that modal resonator with, I'm going to turn the gain up here. You don't just have to hit it with a percussive attack. You could have an attack that ramps up, right? So what's going on here is, let's see, is we're changing the position and size from very tiny, up to the default size, and doing that with this exponential ramp. And then when it hits the modal filter, which is using the crystal glass audio, you get this very organic roll. Very cool. And you'll get different characters, right, depending on how you change the scan. Let's see if we can. Nifty, right? So that's another idea that you can do with the modal filtering. Now, one thing, oops, I didn't really want to go there yet. One thing I did find a little bit frustrating, where is the... one thing that I did find frustrating that I think is kind of an omission that maybe will get addressed in a future version is that I couldn't really find a good, reliable way of just making the wavetable portion, enveloped on its own, because there's no level control. So there's a voice gain control over here, but this applies to the entire voice. And so this voice gain is actually after the filter section. And so unlike in Myth, where you had level controls for the two irises, there doesn't seem to be a way to independently modulate the level of just the wavetable oscillator. What you'd have to do is either change the scan size down to a tiny amount. Let me find an example here where I did that. Let's see, that's the opposite of what I want. Oh, come on. I thought you were in here somewhere. Oh, shoot. Well, I guess I didn't do that. That's weird. I must have overwritten something. But the point is that if you could build a wavetable, right, that like fades out, but there's no like fade out control in here, unlike like a Modwave has that. It actually has a modifier that like fades the thing to 0, and it's like that would be a good thing to have inside a Kontrast, but we don't have it. So other things I've seen people do in some of the factory presets are to instead like modulate the filter cutoff down to where you're no longer like hitting the modal filter with enough to make it ring out. So like I guess we could modify this just to explain what I'm trying to explain. If we turn the modal filter off, so now you hear that our noise, it just dies out because the cutoff goes all the way down. We could even change the character of that noise with a resonance. We could maybe add some high pass filtering. Okay, and so now we've got this like this short percussive attack. Let's turn off oscillator 2. Right, so now we've just got a little noise hit, and this is controlled now by the decay. And this is kind of what you want in classic modal synthesis. Just this little tick, tick, tick. And then that's going to ping the modal filter. And then, like I was saying, we could train it with a different sound profile. Should we try one of the Morlet wavetables? Sure, why not? Morley, Keith, Morley. Oh, that's more noisy. But it's kind of an interesting colored noise, yeah? And so one thing that's interesting is that once you like drag and drop a training file onto the modal filter, while there aren't like bulk import things for wavetables or samples, that can be done if you put things into a pack, like a preset pack. But once we drag and drop like something from this directory, KRC Morlet.wave, Morley.wave, onto the modal filter, I can now like go through the different files in that directory. And so we could see if there's different effects. Now that's not a very good thing. Let's use one of our polygonal wave tables. There we go. We'll find all sorts of different effects based on the spectral content of the wavetable that we train the modal filter on. And in a similar fashion, I guess if I wanted to change like my noise source here, which is not going to make a huge difference given how short we're pinging it, I could go, let's see, I could just go and put like any old, this one isn't noisy. Here's a random Explorer wavetable from the first version of KRC Mathwaves. That actually makes for a nice, clean, percussive hit, doesn't it? Oh boy. And there's jets flying overhead. Okay, probably Isotope RX will take all of this out. But we're heading into Fleet Week here in San Francisco. And so there's an air show that happens. It'll probably be greatly reduced because of the government shutdown. But it's really fun because there's like jets and stuff. But they practice all week. And so I don't know if you heard that, but a jet just buzzed my apartment. Let's turn off the modal filter. Yeah, oh, that's cool. That, that the input source that's exciting the modal is actually pretty nice. We could even combine them. We don't have to mix it 100%. What's it sound like really low? Not like much. But that's pretty cool. It's surprising, actually, the amount of like interesting percussive stuff that you can do in contrast. I'm going to take a short break and then we'll move on to looking at a few other things. Oh, go get KRC Mathwaves. There's a free version. It's 1,600 wavetables. It's completely free. It's at www.wavetables.lol. There's also the complete collection, which is 100 times that. So it's more than 160,000 wavetables made with all sorts of mathematical techniques. Go get that. Also, a little later, we'll talk about liminal space, which is my first plugin, and it's a reverb plugin for Windows, clap and VST3 format, and it's my haunted digital reverb. And there's a couple of presets in contrast that sound great with liminal space. So we'll check that out. That's only $10. Go get it at wavetables.lol. Okay, short break time, and then we'll be back. Like and subscribe for more talky synthesizer content. Perhaps before we leave the world of modal synthesis entirely, I wanted to point out that if you train the modal resonator bank on chordal material, you will have sort of chordal properties. Oh, and this is the patch I was looking for. Now, this is kind of a dissonant. It sounds like we're hitting a steel tank or something, but you can hear how there's multiple pitches inside of that modal resonator, which I think is quite interesting. And if you try a bunch of different samples, like things like chords from electric pianos work really well. This one's more dissonant, as I said. And you can see what I did here to create a very short noise spike is that I changed size. It happens so fast you can't really see it, but I modulate size like all the way down to 0. And this little point, this little point that's highlighted is very, very low, and so it doesn't really continue to excite the resonator. So that's another way that you could do this. We could also find like maybe a black spot like here. We could try to move that guy a little bit. Let's make him wind up there. You can click and drag. Okay, cool. That's neat. I did want to show that. We talked about the complex PWM thing, all these noise things. One thing that's kind of fun and surprising is now you can drag images into the wavetable, and that will map the luminance values of the image into this kind of terrain wavetable. You can also just drag samples on it, and one thing I found is that even though we wouldn't expect like sample playback to work particularly well, that's a hard trick. Turning an arbitrary audio file into a wavetable, like that's something that I tackled with KRC Orchestral Impressions. Serum does a good job of that now. But I found that little vocal slogans like this short speech. Oh, let's go up.
I hear and I forget.
those can actually work pretty well. They're distorted and grainy, so it kind of depends on your tolerance for that. But I could see this kind of thing working in ambient or industrial music, right?
I hear and I forget.
And of course, we could F with this more. I love sample fuckery.
I hear.
Like we could turn on the modal resonator.
I hear and I forget.
And get all sorts of maybe robotic kinds of voices, right? Can we even make it out if we turn it up to 100%? Probably not. So anyway, that was kind of a pleasant surprise. There's a whole bunch of stuff we could explore there. One thing that Kontrast really embraces, as I was saying, is distortion. And unlike in Myth, I find a lot of the distortion that you can get out of Kontrast to be pleasant. And you can get some really aggressive kind of sounds going. And, you know, a lot of times, like when you've got a really, really drivey kind of patch like this going, it sort of doesn't matter what the source wavetable is. But the other thing, and there's a jet again. Can you hear that? You probably can't. It's almost not louder than my computer. But come on, guys. Come on. America. Fuck yeah. Say it with me. Anyway, so this is good. We have jets, we got distortion, that's cool. And so you can actually kind of see it and hear like how this is going to change, right? If you've got this more complex waveform on the left, then we've got a very kind of smooth one, and then it transitions to another one that's about here, and then it ends with a very complex waveform. And so we can really hear that. And there's a bunch of cool modifiers over here. So one is this 8-bit. So let's turn these off. So this is more of a true picture of how this wavetable sounds unaffected, right? It goes up into one of those bell-like timbres that are all over the original KRC Mathwaves collection. But this wavetable has been microwaved. So that's what the MW means. And the microwaved wavetables are based on their conversions of my original wavetables to the format that's very similar to what's in the microwave hardware synth. And that is an 8-bit format where the waveforms are always symmetrical. And so that 8-bit decimation, which then I upsample back to the 32-bit wave file that things like Kontrast supports, that leaves all these little steps in it. And even though you can't really see them, there's another jet. Even though you can't really like see them in the visual, that aliasing is there and you can hear it. Also, I guess I should say, you know, there's a lot of different ways to handle aliasing in a wavetable synthesizer. And I suspect that Kontrast like doesn't do much to accommodate that. It just embraces aliasing. It's already doing enough really fancy stuff with like how these scanlines are moving and things like that. It's a really good trick that it keeps its pitch. It's very impressive and it's really fun to work with. And so you just kind of have to accept that like this synth isn't going to sound like super clean and digital like something like Modwave. But if we really want to embrace like you can hear the aliasing in that high part. If we really want to embrace that, there's an 8-bit button, which we can now put 8 bits onto our 8 bits. And that's really old school. You can hear that aliasing, especially as we go down. And then there's other modifiers. There's one called Fat, which I think So, okay, there's only one wavetable oscillator here, but I think like fat and byte actually essentially give you another version of the wavetable. So with fat, it sounds to me like there's now a wavetable being played an octave down, essentially. So that's fat, and then byte, like it says, oh, there's nice little there's nice little help hints that show up down here. So anything you mouse over, it gives you like a quick summary of what it is, and that's really nice. So Byte's little helper says, try this if you're brave enough. It's very aggressive. And there's no filtering on this particular patch, right? I was just trying to show off, like, what does this sound like? But we can make it more normal, if we engage some filtering, right? Interestingly, I haven't really played with this very much. You do have two filters, and they can be in series or in parallel. You click the little parallel series button down here. We should turn that into a wub, right? Oh man, there's the jets again. Let's grab an LFO over here. The LFOs are syncable. You can create your own shapes. They don't have to loop, so you can use them as very flexible envelopes if you want to. Like, that's cool. Let's make this guy kind of fast. Oh, that's cool. They can be polyphonic or monophonic, so if we want our wubs to always stay in sync. I guess I didn't mean to go into like wubstep territory. Often in those kind of music genres, the shape of the wubby LFO will be changed a little bit, so it's not like perfectly a sine wave. Gives things a little bit more of a vocal character. And again, just to add modulation to something, like if we want to add some wubby modulation to our first filter, we just select it, and now as we drag up here, oh, see, look at that, he's wubbing. There's tracking or not. I mean, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, there's a lot you can do here. I guess while we're fiddling around with the kind of modifiers section here, there is this section called Vibe, and Vibe's a little mysterious. I guess I think it's kind of compression and EQ. Again, it's just vibes, man. But there's several different types. So when you turn it on, there's this warm one, and as you turn it up, it tints the view of the wavetable to let you know what you've got on. So warm has this warm color. Yeah, they can be subtle or they can be stronger. Like warm is pretty subtle. But yeah, that's like rounding off the sound a bit. There's modern, which seems to bring out more high end, I would say. Console can get pretty aggressive. I feel like we're really overdriving something there, right? And then what is the last one? Oh, it's digital. Wow. Like, so we can get pretty wild with that stuff. Let's see what other variations I did on this patch, shall we? We might not spend a lot of time with them. Oh, so here's a version, actually, again, filtering's off here. But you can make your scans like a square. And so you get very interesting motion across the wavetable as the size of that thing changes. And we could just drop in like a different wavetable from the same family. Does it change things much? Ooh, this one's got a lot of aggressive stuff in it. That's cool. I did a version here where there is some mod wheel modulation to give us a different shape. Like a little hourglass shape. Sorry if I'm blowing out your ears, but that's really fun, right? Oh, it does have sync, so there's a sync style effect that you can get in the scan lines. And here we are modulating that with an envelope. So this is going to be a very traditional kind of syncy sound. Oh, and you kind of have to wait, at least on my machine, especially with all the things I have running, like OBS is running right now, and NVIDIA Broadcast, and I think I needed to hit the panic button there, maybe. It does take a second for the presets to change, and so sometimes they're playable and then they'll hitch real quick. I think that's probably a slight bug. So yet another patch that's very aggressive, but it's cool that you can get those kind of sync sounds. I'm not the biggest fan of sync, but you know, it's got its place, right? This is another microwaved wavetable that's just different shaped triangles with like different slopes. And a crazy looking scan. Let's see, what other kind of sounds do we have in here? Oh, our good friend, the Morley wavelet. If we scan it with this kind of circular shape, it does more wibbly stuff than you would even normally get with a Morley wavetable. It sounds really good. What else we got here? Oh, another Morley. This one with a different shape scan line. So there's a tempo syncs kind of thing going on here. There is a sequencer in this too, by the way. I haven't even played with it. We'll get to some of the preset patches that use the sequencer. Let's back off a little bit from like crazy loud land, shall we? So this is a violin ensemble from Wavetable, from KRC Orchestral Impressions. Excuse me, it's drink time. Hey everybody, take a drink. KRC Orchestral Impressions is like 70,000. Wavetables itself, it's just $10. And you know, this is somewhere between There's modulation on the mod wheel. This is somewhere between like a synthetic strings and a sampled strings kind of sound, yeah? And, you know, again, a very cool rosette kind of scanline thing going on there. This does make me wish, patches like this, it does make me wish for like a second layer, right? Or a second wavetable oscillator instead of just the virtual analog oscillator that's in OS2. Because, you know, what if I don't want brass underneath this, right? That would be really natural to do, and like pan one of these right and the other one left and have a real wide stereo panorama. So like this is an impressive patch. It might even benefit from some vibe, right? But it would be cool to be able to like detune 2 layers with the wavetable oscillator. You know, you could do that in your DAW. You could have them on separate tracks, but I feel like that's maybe a little bit of a missed opportunity. Now, maybe that would make this synth a little too CPU intensive. Unlike in Myth, there's not different modes here. There's not like an eco mode. You've got choices of either 12 voices of polyphony or 24 voices of polyphony. And I did start to max out my CPU there for a moment. There is mono mode as well. There's mono mode down here. And it does have, they call it gliss, but it's legato portamento. With adjustable time. Blast off. Let's see, what else did we not check out? Well, let's maybe, let's like cleanse our palette just a second with a polygonal waveform, huh? Going back to this kind of reminds you how much range this synthesizer has. So interestingly, right, like changes to the scanning can have filter-like effects to them, which is pretty nice. Okay, let's take a look at just a few user library patches that I thought were really great. I did want to note that I think in particular Sound Author did a great job with his presets for contrast. There's a lot of useful stuff in there. They're nicely velocity sensitive, which is, you know, that's kind of a thing that I get pissed off at when I, you know, don't see a lot of velocity modulation going on. But let's just in no particular order run through some of the factory patches. So this one, kind of a worm, I guess, that demonstrates the legato mono mode. And I think all of the factory patches have the macro knobs set up with interesting things on them. Like, this is cool how this pulses in. All right, that's cool. Thanks, Data Broth. Good one. There is a sequencer / arpeggiator, which I did not demonstrate, but some of these factory patches do it. And this one's got like resonance and filter cutoff on the mod wheel. That's a pretty neat one. I like that. Very acidy sound, right? Here's a very calming one. Another data broth patch. So you can do like really nice pads. Getting some little cutouts there. That's me running too much stuff at once. Let's see. What about oh, this is a sound author one. This one's really cool. Like a Berlin school kind of thing. With really nice changes on the macro knobs. I think that's pretty cool and beautiful. I've got to get into some of the sequencer capabilities. Here's another sound author one. There's like a filter swell on the mod wheel. And you can also see that it's changing the shape of the scanner. Wow, wow, wow. Anyway, there's some really good stuff in the factory content, and I'm reaching desperately for my mod knobs. And you know, everything's modulatable in this synth. So like even the effects parameters, you can do, like I said, there's, you know, kind of cool percussive stuff going on. So this one by Spectralisk, kind of a algorithmic breakbeat thing. It's very cool. Very cool. Cool stuff. Cool stuff. What else did we like here? Oh, well, you know, it wouldn't be a video from me without a little shameless self-promotion. Nope. See, I was too quick there. The patch wasn't really loaded in yet. I really like this one. This is by Brad and Butter. Called Cassette Strings. And it has good, you know, again, good controls on the morph knobs. We can make it more warbly. What I maybe wanted to show with this is that, you know, the effects are great. But let's we'll turn off the reverb. This is just kind of this particular reverb. It's just kind of a generic reverb. It's nice. But let's take it off and let's like make things a little more extreme by employing a little liminal space, right? So liminal space is my Windows VST and Clap plugin, and it happens to have a preset called cassette. And so here's cassette strings through cassette. So that's very lo-fi ambient kind of tone. Cassette is one of these patches that modulates derez with a wavetable LFO. Yes, it's a reverb with wavetables. And so the entire tail of the reverb like warbles around. So both our source and our reverb tail are independently warbling around and being weird. So that's kind of a fun thing you could do. Liminal space is just $10 over at www.wavetables.lol. Sorry you missed my intro sale, but it's still not that expensive. Let's listen to this one. Comment. Oh, this is really cool. So this is kind of an aleatoric approach to using the modal filter. So this wavetable just has these little specks of white in a field of black, And as the scanline hits it, we're pinging that modal filter, and it's really beautiful. And I think we get more shimmer when we push up the mod wheel. There's just so much cool stuff you can do with this synth. Thanks, Astral Abyssal. That's a good one. Did I have many more? Oh, here we go. Let's do another one that's really good with liminal space. This is Sound Author, so Dreams in VHS. This kind of sounds like the introduction to a cheesy 80s VHS instructional tape or something. Really cool sound, nice lo-fi character to it. But let's do that same thing. Let's turn off the shimmer, because it might be, we could leave it on. We'll try it both on and off. But let's turn off the shimmer, and instead, I mean, I happen to have a patch in liminal space that's called VHS. And it's another one of these patches that does a lot of like weird pitch modulation. Ooh. Maxing out my CPU by playing too many notes at once. I love it. I love it. We're in backrooms territory. Let's see here. I'm trying to get your interface back up, Kontrast. Anyway, Dawesome Kontrast. I like it a lot. I think it's very good. I do actually think this is worth, especially the intro price. It's worth $89. One thing to know, I haven't bought it yet. I am going to buy it. But it has a very generous 90-day trial. You can download the software either through Traction or from Dawesome's site. But then if you go to your Traction account, you can register it and activate it. There's a little activation thingy. What'll happen is if you register with Traction, you can get 90 days, which is like a long time. That's incredible before you have to pay for it. Now, I know a lot of people are big fans of Dawesome, and it was an immediate buy for them. But if you're not sold on it, or you want to see, like, are there other packs that are coming from it? I'm sure that my pack will be available before 90 days. You can take time and make a decision. Also, like Myth, like one of the best parts of Myth was that it had a great user guide, and Kontrast also has a great user manual. It's fun and friendly. And it explains everything. There's all sorts of features that I can't even get to in like an hour-long video here, but it explains all the concepts, has lots of these little tips all over the place, little purple tips. Another thing I thought was pretty great is that Peter, in his documentation, he does not pretend that this is a completely new idea. Where is it? Terrain. He actually has a little note about contrast and wave terrain synthesis. I saw a hardware product, I forget who it's by, recently that I think it was being shown at KnobCon. It was like a cool looking hardware synthesizer, but the guys behind it were kind of pretending like this sort of synthesis is entirely new. But Peter points out that people thought about this for a long time, and he also acknowledges Curtis Rhodes, the computer music tutorial down here. This book is decades old, and I have a physical copy. It's not here with me, but it's an excellent book. And there's a whole chapter that describes like a wave terrain synthesis. So it's like, this is not a new idea. I don't think there was any implementation of it, but it was like, look, you could imagine things as a topical map, and you could unwrap a waveform from that, and it would have interesting timbral motion during time. Talky. Anyway, I think all in all, this is a really, despite a couple maybe missed opportunities and maybe one or two little missing features, this is a pretty great synth. It does things that no other synth does. You kind of think about it, as a way on your own to explore new types of oscillators, right? Basically, this whole scanline thing is basically just creating all sorts of different oscillators for you. There's one more thing. Oh, there's time crystals. Is this another? Yeah, it's another sound author. It's just a fascinating way to take existing wavetables and turn them into completely new oscillators, which is something I've spent a lot of time on, like computing different kinds of wavetables, like Bezier wavetables. They're like, hey, what if you had an oscillator that was like made out of Bezier curves, right? This is really pretty. So there's a lot going on here. It's really fun. It has some neat convenience features, like you can actually export your wavetable. I didn't even talk about blurring and contrast. See, now we've made this wavetable more square wavy. You can drag to export. You can drag to export the last held notes over here. It has randomization features. It's really pretty cool. So, go check it out. Go check it out at traction.com or at Dawesome, and see for yourself 90 days. Hey, and if you want like more wavetables that you could ever run through and use them in this very fascinating synthesizer, go to wavetables.lol. At least go get the free set and get on my mailing list, and then you'll know about sales and stuff. So it's your old pal Keith from wavetables.lol signing off. Be good. Don't get attacked by jets. And I will talk to you later.
Sorry, I didn't see you there.
It's fine. Fog's thick tonight.
You saved the starfish, thank you.
Least I could do.
You have the most incredible eyes.
Most folks call it the Innsmouth look.
I call it beautiful.
Is that a tentacle?